Raj Kuchada Shikara Sata Shish Vidvani Gaisa Bhayasaram Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jaina Tuli Bhavishwa Vishnupada Bhagavan Supre Raj Kuchada Shikara Sata Shish Vidvani Gaisa Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Swami Prabhupada Ki Granta Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi All glory to Samadhavati. All glory to Samadhavati. All glory to Samadhavati. All glory, Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Excellent arrangements. The Transcendental Dancer. We'll read a little bit from Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. The Puri Express left Calcutta around 10 p.m. After taking a massage, Srila Prabhupada stretched out on the lower bunk to rest. And Hari Sari and Rameshwar took the two bunks opposite him. Around midnight, Prabhupada turned on his light, sat up, and began chanting softly on his beads. Within a few minutes, Rameshwar woke up and, seeing his spiritual master sitting up, paid obeisances and also sat up, waiting expectantly. Immediately, Srila Prabhupada began to speak about the inevitability of war between Russia and America. Even if America took to Krishna consciousness, the war would be inevitable. The only way to stop the godlessness of communism. When Rameshwar asked if that war would be within his lifetime, Prabhupada said it was difficult to say. It depended, he said, on the devotees' distribution of books and Back to Godhead magazines. Although in Russia the government tried to strictly control all literature, Krishna conscious books were entering nonetheless and were immediately becoming popular. The communist leaders were becoming fearful, but they also had some respect for Indian culture. Prabhupada said by increasing book distribution, America and thereafter the whole world would become Krishna conscious. So you have to push on more and more, he said. This opposition, brainwashing charges means they are recognizing this as a culture. They may like it or not, but they recognize it as something permanent. Prabhupada said he had no political aim, but he knew that Indian culture, coupled with American money, could save the world. You must think in terms of the whole world, he said, not just one nation. That is our preaching. That is the duty of the GBC. The talk went on for more than 2 hours, and Rameshwar felt completely satisfied by the intimate instructions. Although he had once before asked some of the same questions about book distribution and the war, Prabhupada had chosen not to answer. But now he revealed some of his thoughts. Just as a father instructs a trustworthy son. Conditions on the ISKCON land in Bhubaneswar were primitive. 2 small mud-walled huts with thatched roof. Srila Prabhupada occupied one 8-by-12 room in one of the cottages, and his servant and secretary stayed just on the other side of the wall. Electricity had been installed on the land a few days before, so Hari Sari had to place an electric lamp and a dictating machine on Srila Prabhupada's desk. The second small building, about 25 feet from Prabhupada's hut, was a tiny temporary temple room. A shabby canvas room spanned the open area between the two buildings, and Prabhupada's Vyasasana was beneath this, arranged so that he could lecture at outdoor gatherings. 2 rented tents also stood on the land to accommodate visiting devotees during Prabhupada's stay. Prabhupada's outdoor toilet facilities, about 25 feet behind his hut, consisted of a latrine and a separate area for bathing. Srila Prabhupada did not mind the primitive facilities. In fact, he liked them. Although he was ill and for personal comfort could have been residing in his choice of comfortable buildings in the West, a manor in London, a castle in Paris, a penthouse apartment in New York City, he felt perfectly at home and happy living in a primitive mud and thatched hut on a secluded patch of land in the dust of Orissa. Sitting on the outdoor Vyasasan, Prabhupada spoke to a small gathering of devotees and some local villagers. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, had two favorite places, Bengal and Orissa. And in Orissa, Jagannath Puri, he spent the last 18 years of his life. He went to Vrindavan in South India, but then returned here to stay with his personal associates, Sri Ramananda Rai, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and C.K. Mahiti. Prabhupada quoted a scriptural reference indicating that the spiritual movement for this age will begin from Utkala, or Orissa. Srila Prabhupada said Orissa was very special to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and his own Guru Maharaj was also born here at Puri. Now we have got a little place here, he said. It doesn't matter if it takes time, but slowly, but surely we can develop this center, especially since Bhubaneswar is going to be the capital of Orissa. And in the future, many tourists will come to see other attractions of Orissa. Now it is up to the Orients to develop this idea. Prabhupada spoke with Gaur Govinda Swami and told him to begin advertising private meetings in the afternoon and a regular lecture kirtan prasadam program at night. That evening, very few visitors came. ISKCON had done little preaching in Orissa, and Prabhupada was not as well known. Mostly local farmers, villagers, and poor children came for the free prasadam. Prabhupada told the audience that he could speak in 3 languages, English, Bengali, and Hindi, but not Oriya. He therefore decided to speak in English and have Gaur Govinda translate. He would speak a few sentences and then pause while Gaur Govinda gave the Oriya translation. In this material world, said Prabhupada during his evening lecture, always the attempt is to defy the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the present moment, the so-called scientists' only business is how to defy the supremacy of God. Naturally, this movement has to face many impediments, because at the present moment, the whole world is practically godless. Even in our country, in India, where Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, even here, the same attempt is going on. Big scholars, big politicians, they take Bhagavad Gita in their hand to show that they are great authorities in Bhagavad Gita. But they are presenting commentation just to defy Krishna. Prabhupada spoke for about 10 minutes. There were no questions. Bhubaneswar's hot days and cool nights just suited Prabhupada. After resting for a few hours, he rose and began translating Srimad Bhagavatam. It was the first time he had done so since leaving Bombay for Kumbh Mela. He was nearing the end of the 9th canto. This is February 1977. Gaur Govinda Maharaj had scheduled a cornerstone laying ceremony for a new temple on February 2nd, the appearance day of Lord Nityananda. Prabhupada agreed to stay until then and then leave the next morning. Srila Prabhupada Ki. We'll begin up where we left off. This is the bottom of page 292 in case anyone is keeping track. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, part 1, 4th chapter, text 9. Unless Dr. Bar's changed it. Tasmin Mahabhagavato. Tasmin Mahabhagavato. Dvaipayana Suritsaka. Lokananucharan Siddha. Lokananucharan Siddha. Asasadaya Dritchaya. Asasadaya Dritchaya. Tasmin Mahabhagavato. Dvaipayana Suritsaka. Lokananucharan Siddha. Asasadaya Dritchaya. Please chant. Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suritaka Lokananucharan Siddha Asasadaya Jitshaya Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suritsaka Lokananucharan Siddha Asasadaya Jitshaya Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suritsaka Lokananucharan Siddha Asasadaya Jitshaya Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suritsaka Lokananucharan Siddha Asasadaya Jitshaya. Ladies. Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suritsaka Lokananucharan Siddha Asasadaya Jitshaya. Tasmin, then, Mahabhagavata, a great devotee of the Lord, Dvaipayana, of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, Surit, a well-wisher, Saka, a friend, Lokan, the three worlds, Anucharan, traveling, Siddhe, in that ashrama, Asasad, arrived, Yajishchaya, by his own perfect accord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Please repeat. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Purport. Maitreya was one of the disciples of Maharshi Parasara, the father of Vyasadeva. Thus Vyasadeva and Maitreya were friends and mutual well-wishers. By some fortunate accident, Maitreya reached the place where Lord Krishna was resting. To meet the Lord is not an ordinary incident. Maitreya was a great sage and a learned scholar philosopher, but not a pure devotee of the Lord. And therefore his meeting with the Lord at that time may have been due to agyata sukriti, or some unknown devotional service. Pure devotees always engage in pure devotional activities, and therefore their meeting with the Lord is natural. When those who are not up to that standard meet the Lord, it is due to the unforeseen fortune of accidental devotional service. Om Jnana Tvindasya Garanjana Shlakaya Chakshurama Teminitasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangho Manklaya Gurum Yatkripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Tinataram. Now, they're interesting that how Srila Prabhupada gives this very realized explanation of the meeting between the Supreme Lord and Maitreya Muni. We understand that there are many different types of relationships, but Maitreya Muni had no direct relationship with Krishna, as did previously we've seen other like Uddhava and the Pandavas, etc. But Maitreya is just a wandering mendicant, you can say. But by some grace, and Prabhupada explains that this is not some ordinary event. He terms it here as accidental. Accidental. Because as we were reading in the Prabhupada's Leelamrita, so Prabhupada is in Bhubaneswar. At that time, Bhubaneswar was the proposed capital of Orissa. Orissa was just becoming independently established as a state, essentially. And so Bhubaneswar is being proposed as the capital, but there's nothing in Bhubaneswar. We were there just after Prabhupada left, and the temple, as it's described here, was just 2 mud huts. And Prabhupada's latrine, surrounded by a bamboo curtain for privacy. Not much privacy, open to the sky. Literally just a bamboo curtain. And nothing but dust right off the National Highway. Of course, that's a great fortune. National Highway 5. But it meant that all day long, all you heard was trucks, and from the trucks, unlimited dust. And the constant horns, even though there's nothing, but because there's buffaloes and rickshaws and so many other things, continuous cacophony of horns blaring from the trucks running on the highway nearby. So in this setting, some persons accidentally attended these practically not advertised, pandal programs. As described, there's some farmers, some children like this. No respectable gentlemen. No one was coming to that part of Orissa at that time. There was nothing there. But these great souls, due to some Agyata Sukriti, had the great fortune to meet the pure devotee of the Lord. Whether or not, or how, obviously it affects them, but how did that transform their lives, we don't really know. But the opportunity was there. Lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. So this is a very special benediction. If one understands this simple formula, sometimes people, we tell them, please come to the temple. And they think, oh, it's just another building in Brooklyn. But they don't realize that here in this building in Brooklyn resides the Supreme Personality of Godhead and some very senior advanced devotees, ready to benedict them. But by some Agyata Sukriti, people are coming every day, coming to the restaurant, getting a pamphlet on chanting, taking prasadam. Everyone is getting something. He's not going away empty-handed. At least he's hearing Hare Krishna. So what a great fortune. In previous days, someone had to travel to the holy places in order to get the association of the sages. But here we have an oasis that is open for everyone, even in such turbulent and tumultuous times. So such is that. And Mahavat, we're reading here in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, a very interesting. This is chapter 14, the disappearance of Lord Krishna. So the backstory is that Arjuna had gone to Dwarka to see things after the fratricidal event of the Battle of Kurukshetra. But he didn't return for 7 months. And in that time period, Yudhishthira started to notice certain inauspicious omens. And omens are not simply just some superstition. For those who are realized, who know such things, they're like guideposts indicating the direction, which way things will go, not just metaphorically, but however you want to describe it, politically, socially, economically, all these things are there. So in this situation, this particular verse, Pajot Patan Narabhyagra Dibyan Boman Sadayadakan Darunan Sangsato Durat Bhayam no Buddhi Mohanam. Just see, O man with a tiger's strength. This is Yudhishthira talking to Bhima. How many miseries due to celestial influences, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Material advancement of civilization means advancement of the reactions of the threefold miseries due to celestial influence, earthly reactions, and bodily or mental pains. Sound familiar? By the celestial influence of the stars, there are many calamities like excessive heat, cold, rains or no rains, and the after effects are famine, disease, and epidemic. The aggregate result is the agony of the body and the mind. Man-made material science cannot do anything to counteract these threefold miseries. They are all punishments from the superior energy of Maya under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, our constant touch with the Lord by devotional service can give us relief without our being disturbed in the discharge of our human duties. The Asuras, however, who do not believe in the existence of God, make their own plans to counteract all these threefold miseries, and so they meet with failures every time. The Bhagavad Gita 7:14 clearly states that the reaction of material energy is never to be conquered because of the binding effects of the three modes. They can simply be overcome by one who surrenders fully in devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord. And that verse is Daivi Isha Gunamaya Mama Maya Dharatya. So we understand, of course, everyone knows that the second name, we have the Bhagavatam is the answer. No? The Bhagavatam is the answer. But sometimes we don't think where to look. Now everybody just says, Google it. But the solution is Bhagavatam is the answer. So therefore we want that everyone should have access to this. And you can. On the internet, everyone can have access to database. Right? Be a sage, page by page. Right? Immediately you can study. You don't need to, you can carry the entire compendium of Vedic knowledge on your supercomputer handheld device. Yeah, who could think of a few years ago, it was impossible to even conceive of when we joined the temple, how to have Prabhupada's lectures, how to hear them continuously. You had to have a tape recorder, you had to have cassettes. And if you had a cassette, you had to have a pencil. Everybody know what the pencil's for? To wind up the slack on the cassette. So many things are there. But now the answer is for anyone who wants it within his grasp. It's a very important consideration. Now that we know where the answer is, we have to direct people to find it. So just according to this verse, we see that everyone is running around basically in ignorance, proposing so many man-made solutions. But in their man-made solutions, they're having no effect. Actually, they're having just the opposite effect, and that's predicted. Just the opposite effect. Right? Everything being done simply on the basis of ignorance. And so why should anyone trust the material scientists? An intelligent person sees that the only real arbiter is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Daivi yesha gunamaya mama maya dharatya. It's as simple as that. And Prabhupada gives that the last sentence in the purport, and for one who is completely surrendered, can easily cross beyond it. But all these challenges is adi bhautik, adi atmik, adi daivik. They come to us, and depending on our consciousness, we see them in a particular perspective, and then we approach them accordingly. The materialists, of course, they have no such perspective. All they have is the brainwashing. One of our devotees, George Harrison. Everybody knows George Harrison? He had a song called Devil's Radio. You ever hear that one, Maharaj? You have to show it to Maharaj. Devil's Radio. Very insightful. Talking all about how people are just simply, whatever they hear, just fills their brain. And then they react or respond accordingly. So this is, anyway, so many opportunities for realization are there. And when a circumstance, just like this situation with Prabhupada and Lilamat is talking about the potential for war. But he predicated it on the fact that depending on how many books we distribute, and just see what happened. Now Russia is one of the most Krishna conscious cultures in the world. And this is all due to one pure devotee. There is no comparison. There are some people who claim in India, wherever you go, there's always some. Prabhupada said in every alley there's a God. He said it's a God factory in every alley. He said especially in Bengal. But these gods, who are they? They claim some title, they get some cheap followers to build a temple, and then they give themselves some name, Mahaprabhu. Amazing. Mahaprabhu. This person is claiming to be Mahaprabhu. And what has he done? But foolish people, they want to associate and attach themselves to some popular figure. So these so-called sadhus, they're no different from this cultural icons, these pop, rap, rock stars that have throngs of followers. You look at their Instagram page or their Twitter feed, and 3 million followers. But that's nothing compared to the followers of Lord Krishna. But yet these people are worshipped, literally worshipped. So this is the misdirected civilization. And this is our duty, how to rectify the situation by the distribution of this transcendental literature. We have to completely rack our brains how to distribute this timeless message of the Bhagavatam. And this Atlantic Antic is one such opportunity. There are many, everywhere. I had to walk to Court Street yesterday, and there on the steps of Borough Hall was a huge program. I had no idea. But we should have someone who's monitoring these things, because it was huge. We could have been there distributing books, doing Harinam. So we need to plug into that situation. What's going on in our neighborhood? And they had amplification, and we're talking, same thing, they're just talking and talking. Oh, we're here, all here for unity, for this, for that. You know, it's just the same platitudes. Nobody knows, so they propose something which everyone can agree on. Yes, let's have some unity. Right? Everyone should agree. But it should be unity based on what? Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. That dharma means the laws of God. That's simple. Very common platform. But no one wants to accept. No one wants to accept the laws of God. At every instance, they're saying, no, I have my own laws. I have my own interpretation. I have this. But who are you? Who is that such person in gross, abject ignorance? What can he do? He's helpless in the face of the three modes of material nature. He cannot do anything. He cannot control the movements of his eyelids. But he's thinking, I know something, and I can speak, right? Like the frog, simply attracting Kala, the Kala Sarpa, the black snake of death, by his croaking. The snake has no ears, but the frog makes such a sound, and it vibrates, it resonates. And the snake follows those vibrations right to his evening snack. Right? He's literally calling death, please come and eat me. So the materialists are also doing the same thing. They're saying so many things, but it's nothing. They're just inviting death to come and take this ignorant soul and again throw him into the whirlpool of material existence, 8,400,000 species of life. Again and again. Again and again. Prabhupada said, if you lose this chance, this human form of life, your next human form of life is millions of births. He told us that in Mayapur. Many people were shocked. Everyone's thinking, no, I'm a devotee. My next birth is human being. Prabhupada said, your next birth, he's only talking to devotees. Your next birth will be millions of years. Millions of years. And the pure devotee is Trikalagya. He didn't want us to become distracted by pursuits of material pleasures, thinking that I'm dovetailing. This is not dovetailing. Grihasthas don't have license to exercise their so-called independence to the degree that the spiritual master's mission suffers. You do so at your own peril. You can think whatever you like. I'm doing this, I'm worshiping my deities at home. So, and in this way, every villager in India is worshiping his deities at home. So what, we've again become villagers? Once
there's no preaching left.
The duty of the disciple is to serve the spiritual master, body, mind, and soul, not just the sannyasis who carried the tridanda, which indicates that body, mind, and action, mind, words, and action. Mind, words, and action. So actions means we have to take up this duty. One has to know what is his duty. The difficulty we're reading also in this 14th chapter, first canon, it describes that the upheaval that Yudhishthira was not just a few instances. He saw that people were acting in foul endeavors. They weren't following the varnashram system. People were not acting according to those principles. So many inauspicious things. And in this way, people were transgressing that simply for greed, wherever the money was. So if you're a Brahmin, you're just pursuing the money. You're transgressing your varna. So all these things contribute to the downfall, the degradation of Kali Yuga and the downfall of human civilization. And everyone knows this, but what is that? Bandho atmatmanastasya. One's mind can be his best friend or his worst enemy. So the mind is one's best friend when he's in the association of devotees. Because his mind has brought him, what does it say? Birds of a feather flock together. Where everyone reinforces that sublime principle of service to the spiritual master as the prime directive, of the disciple. So we have ample opportunity. The Varnashram is set up in such a way that a man, he has his duties as a brahmachari, as a grihastha, as a vanaprastha, as a sannyas. And at any time, he can participate at the point where he feels that he can make the most impact in the mission of his spiritual master. You can come in at any point. The key is not to leave. The idea, just like you have the military. You go in the military, you have a certain term of, you could say, recruitment for 4 years, 12 years, 20 years, whatever. And then you retire. And when you retire from that position, basically you're no longer required to follow those rules and regulations anymore. Although there are certain points that one never gives up. But the tendency is to become a little bit relaxed or complacent. You no longer have to maintain the same situational awareness. Someone near the door. So in this way, we have that tendency to think, I've done so much and now I can relax. But this relaxed condition is not the platform for a devotee who is marked by always thinking how I can serve the spiritual master in Krishna. If one is thinking like that, then what is the possibility of engaging in some other endeavor? He will always think how. What are we reading in Chaitanya Charitamrita? Until Lila, Volume 6. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meets Raghunath Das Goswami. And what was Raghunath Das's fame? He was a grihastha. He had a beautiful wife. He came from one of the most wealthiest families. His uncles were the tax collectors for the emperor, for the king. And of course, they were stealing a little bit on the side and putting it. So they got in trouble. And of course, with a name like that, Haranya, right? Haranya means Haranya Majumdar, gold. Haranya means gold. But he was always thinking, how can I escape and join up with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? That's all he was thinking. How can I escape and join up with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So why did Krishnadas Kaviraj relate such a... sometimes we read in Back to Godhead magazine, there used to be a column, how I became a devotee, how I came to Krishna consciousness. Very few stories are like Raghunath Das Goswami, maybe Ambarish Prabhu. But it just shows the determination and the single-mindedness. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kuru nandana. And if we don't develop this focus, how can we be successful in spiritual life? Even the materialists, they have huge seminars. They go on for days and days. And what is that? That's one word, focus. How to focus. And they'll just wax poetically and otherwise on how one can achieve this singularity. But the devotees automatically know how to do it. Just by chanting the holy name, one is constantly praying, my dear Lord, my dear energy Lord, please engage me in your service. But then we see sometimes, Krishna comes to a devotee and he analogously taps him on the shoulder and says, hey, I have a service for you. And the devotee says, no, not yet, later. I'll do it when I'm older. There's that famous story about the 4 letters. Who knows that story, the 4 letters? I can't believe Nata brought us to know that story. The 4 letters. There was one, these are all stories from the Itihas, the Puranas. There was one person, he, somehow or other, he got a favorable arrangement with Yamaraj, Lord of Death. He did something to please him. Okay? Something to please him. Yamaraj is, the way it's related, he's very easily tricked into such situations. So he said, okay, what's your benediction? He said, I want notice of my impending death. And you will send me 4 notices. And so Yamaraj said, okay, done. He said, that's an easy one. So time went on, and this man was just enjoying as much as he could. Thinking, I have a pass. I have a get out of hell pass. And then all of a sudden, suddenly, as death happens, he found himself standing in the court of Yamaraj, face to face with Chitragupta, who starts to, go through his, oh, well, you've got a very interesting life here. You're going to spend a lot of time here. And he said, no, wait a second. I have a deal with your boss. I want to see him. Chitragupta says, oh, not another one. So Yamaraj pops up. Poof, there he is. And he's standing, he says, oh, I remember you. Nice to see you. You made it. Congratulations. And the man said, no, there's some mistake. You're supposed to give me 4 letters. I'm not supposed to be here. I was going to rectify myself. You were going to give me those letters. I was going to go to Rishikesh and Hardwar and perform penance and austerities. And I was going to, get purified and elevate myself. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I didn't get your letters. What do you mean you didn't get my letters? I said, your hair turned gray, didn't it? He said, yes. And then started to fall out, yes. I said, okay. And then your teeth became loose and dropped out. And he said, oh yeah, yes. And your hearing. How's your hearing? What did you say? And by the way, I have all of these, so it's not a joke. He said, yes, I remember that. And what was the last one was invalidity. It says inability to walk without assistance, frailty, rheumatism, arthritis, paralysis. So he had to admit that he got those letters. He just didn't understand what was the nature of the letters. So he had no argument. He had to surrender. Prabhupada said, old age means impending death. Everyone's heard that? Old age means impending death. And some people are getting old even when they're 30. They're getting some disease, they're getting some reaction. You see people, there's one disease where a person's age accelerates, so they're born and they die at 12 years old, but their body's 100 years old. Such karma is there. Who can imagine? What kind of disease is that? That age is such accelerated that your 100 years is compressed into 12, or even less. And these are real diseases. Krishna has a disease for anyone.
Got a lot more we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, you want to talk about plagues or pandemics, you haven't seen nothing yet. But the devotee doesn't care. Thinks, my dear Lord, whatever, I am simply your surrendered soul. That's all. We don't see anything in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where the devotees are worried about, the fact that the emperor is Muslim or this is that or that. No. There are a few things with Ramchandra Khan. He was a bit of a rascal. But all in all, the devotees they're all focused on just the holy name, saying with the devotees, spreading the Sankirtan movement, solving the problems of the world. I mean, practically speaking. That's the seed, from which the Lord Chaitanya's tree has sprung and is continuing to flourish, and will continue despite any so-called material situation. At this point, we have to firmly believe that nothing can stop the Krishna conscious movement. Nothing. Except our own limitations. And Prabhupada indicated that. He said that the only thing that can stop it is from within. The only thing. So we have to take great care in that regard. That is our solemn duty, to try to cooperate. Prabhupada said, if you love me, you should show this by your cooperation. So we have everything. Everything is there. Just we have to stay strong and fixed and not become influenced by the current events. They're just simply a distraction. Simply a distraction. Of course, it's exacerbated because 24/7 people are constantly hearing about this, seeing this. They can't escape it. But you see, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Arjuna was gone for 7 months. Arjuna was supposed to bring back the news. Everything is okay. But we saw what happened, that, he lingered there until the end. And he couldn't be consoled. It was just, even months later when he sees Yudhishthira, he's just in tears, can't control himself. So to cry for separation for Krishna, that's a very elevated platform. But to cry about current events, that's complete Maya and ignorance. And we should try to recognize it and not be bewildered. And the only way that happens is you strictly follow your vows. Strictly, not haphazardly, not, because there is no strength. It's just like people are worried now about taking some inoculation against a so-called virus. But every day we have to chant the holy name if we want to keep Maya from infecting us. So this is our inoculation. Every day, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So there's no substitute for the truth. There's no substitute for the transcendental reality. There's no substitute for the Bhagavatam Is the Answer. And you think, and these karmas, they do try though. You see, they have these things. They have people called fact checkers. Fact checkers. But they're using one imperfect source to check another imperfect source. It's ridiculous. It's beyond ridiculous. Beyond ridiculous is another word. What's that? Ludicrous. Not the rapper. Ludicrous. It's so ridiculous. It begs reality. But yet, here we are. Walk out the door, you'll see it everywhere on display. So use that opportunity when you have to go out to do an errand, to observe the situation closely and recognize and be grateful for the transcendental knowledge that has been given to us, that allows us to see things as they are and to remain aloof and to perfect this human form of life. One life, just one life. Otherwise, millions of years. Think about it. Any questions or comments? Mr. But you have to talk loud, Krishna. I got 3 letters.
Your classes always cause me to think of many interesting things. And I wanted to say something. You're talking about how the Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And I had an interesting experience in Poland. I did Harinam for 3 hours, and people gave me like the equivalent of 50 cents in donations. So I wasn't able to distribute any books because I only give people books if they give me money.
Because what? You didn't have Polish books, or?
No, I had some books, but if people give me money, I give them books. Otherwise, I just generate.
I see. Okay.
So at any rate, I was packing up, and this guy was came up and asked if he could ask me some questions. And I just wanted to go home and take prasadam and get ready to go to France the next day. He kept asking these questions. So we've just been studying that chapter. The Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, you know. And my friend Gorkun had given me a Polish Bhagavatam to distribute. So I said, actually, I have a book that will answer all your questions. And I showed him this Bhagavatam. And he bought it for the equivalent of 15.
I showed him that chapter, right?
So it was very practical. You're talking about the grahastas. I was in a temple where I wanted to do Harinam at the football game, but the grahasta temple president decided that he'd rather take the devotees canoeing that day, you know? And missed the opportunity to share the holy name with thousands of people because I'm not like Vishnu John or Vidya that I can chant at the football game myself.
Yeah.
So that was reminding me of that.
Yeah, we don't go to these events for some, for our personal pleasure. We used, in Gainesville, we would do the stadium there holds 80,000 people, 80,000 people. And it's always packed. And those who can't get in are outside. And we would be chanting outside, and of course, they love to, their thing is to spray us with beer. Shake a can, pop the top, and shh.
Respectful, right?
Very respectful. It's an Abhishek with their most holy water. So, that's our service. That was our service, to go there and chant and distribute. And people who saw it, and of course we used to, we're distributing on the campus. So there's just a few rowdies, and just like it's described here in the chapter, how people become bewildered by intoxication, even to killing their own family members. When people are intoxicated, they have no judgment. They have no judgment. So we don't mind. We understand that this is their actions clouded by the mode of ignorance. We're here chanting, we're fine, not a problem. We go home and, put our clothes in the laundry and take a shower. What to do?
The 2 things that I remembered. So you were talking about how we have to get our vaccination booster shots every day.
Sure.
Chanting Hare Krishna. And it reminded me of something Inder said. He said that japa is like taking tablets, and going on Harinam is like taking an injection, like much more powerful. And so just to put that out there. And then also, you're saying sometimes people, they don't want to like fully surrender. You're speaking about people maybe living outside the temple or preaching and stuff is not just for sannyasis. So we hear in this verse, here Maitreya, he just had some agyata sukriti, but somehow he meant the Lord. But we don't want to just accumulate agyata sukriti. It's much faster if we, like you said, like listen to what Krishna is trying to tell us to do, try to follow the order of the spiritual master and push on the mission. And we actually get a lot more krita punya that we need in our bank account to be able to attain our goals.
the impetus for the Grihastha is that whatever he achieves, just like whatever he makes money-wise, he shares to the family. Whatever he achieves spiritually also accrues to the family members, of which they may not be in that Krishna conscious situation. But the person, what does it say? Guru nasasyat pitino nasasyat. One should not become guru, father, teacher, unless he can deliver his dependents from the cycle of birth and death. It's a very important statement. When you take responsibility as a guru or as a grihastha, you have a responsibility to deliver everyone in your immediate, whether it's your disciple or your family members. This is not an option. This is an option. You go to hell, they go to hell. It's just, so it automatically brings you to another level where you accept responsibility. That yes, I may or may not, I may have to suffer so many inconveniences, but this is my duty. And so therefore I will do it with, this is how Prabhupada, is training us. We saw him up till the end of his life. In the most inconvenient situation. I think about it. I have a piece of the bed sheet that covered Srila Prabhupada as he lied there in Krishna Balaram Mandir. And when he passed, that bed sheet was taken by my godbrother. I have a piece that I wear around my neck. We have a certain fixed duty. You may have so many other duties, but your primary duty is your relationship, your obligation to the spiritual master, the debt that cannot be repaid. How many times Prabhupada has to say this? We chant it every single morning. Chite te kuriya aikya, ano kuriya maya. We have every day. Any other questions? Maharaj.
Yeah, as Prabhupada said, cooperate. There's a lot of different ideas about cooperation. What are you saying?
Well, it's, we have, if we cooperate on the primary things, all the small things are taken care of. Prabhupada wanted us to be, to have a unified system of management, which was absent, post-departure of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's an imperfect system at best, but trying to make it work is what Srila Prabhupada wanted, for better or worse. He gave that example that a camel is a horse built by a committee. So anyone who's ever been in a GBC meeting knows exactly what that means. But the essence is that, in one sense, at least from my perspective, is that we're placeholders. This may not be the GBC I want, but the GBC, the system of management set up by Srila Prabhupada, should exist after my departure, after all of our departures, and it should go to the next generation. So our cooperation is to maintain at least that level of consistency with Prabhupada's instructions. His directions on management, they're there. His instructions with regard to the GBC, they're there. How the GBC should act. Everything is in somewhat of a seed-like state still. And it will be expanded as necessary. What did Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said? At some point, the judges will be wearing tilak. Now, right now we have a lot of lawyers wearing tilak. And so it's very conceivable that some of them will become judges. This is all part of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's grand plan. The TOVP is the manifestation of the success this cooperation, etc. We may have so many ideas about it, but the fact is this is all being done based on the prophetic visions of our acharyas. And when we fulfill these prophecies by executing them, by manifesting them, then we see that everything else, and what did he say? The whole world will chant the holy name. Every family, and it's already happening. The second largest ethnic contingent in Mayapur is what? Russian. And then after that, do you know what it is? Not talking about the native Bengalis, obviously there's Bengalis. Chinese. And then South Americans, yes. So this is already a house, envisioned by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Prabhupada. So we should have faith. We should be encouraged in our faith by seeing these accomplishments. Forget everything else around it. That's just the milk boiling. It'll keep boiling. Any other? It's 9:06.
This will be just 1 minute.
Okay.
There's a lot about the Gyata Sukriti in this verse in Purport.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful Purport on the Gyata Sukriti, which hopefully I can read in a minute. It comes in a section where the dog of Shivananda
Yes.
is at the Godhead. This is a result of sadhu sangha, consequent association with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and promotion back to Godhead. This result is possible even for a dog by the mercy of the Vaishnava. Therefore, everyone in the human form of life should be induced to associate with devotees by rendering a little service, even by eating prasadam, or to speak of chanting and dancing. Everyone can be promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. It is therefore requested that all the devotees in our ISKCON community become pure Vaishnavas, so that by their mercy, all the people of the world will be transferred to Vaikuntha Loka, even without their knowledge.
Hari Bol.
Everyone should be given a chance to take the vows and be induced to dance for the even animals in fact to God.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam